So since my V8 Touareg is now more or less done and I have a more or less reliable daily, it's time to get some work done on this thing. Now it does have a multitude of issues, some are more significant than others. After all, it is a 212,000 mile car. So over the last few weeks I've been acquiring some of these parts and I think this is all that we need to bring this car to more or less 100%. I plan to have this car go on cars and beds, which is why I want to get this car to practically 100%, as close as I can get it to 100% anyway, because the vehicles that go on cars and beds are usually very close to pristine. And these Land Cruisers fetch a lot of money if they are in good shape. So I'm gonna do my best to bring it there. So I found this car on Facebook Marketplace and the owners who sold it to me, they got it from Bring a Trailer. And they actually paid $13,000 for this car on Bring a Trailer in 2020. So 4 years ago, this car sold for 13 grand. It spent a few years in Wisconsin and I guess accumulated enough issues for the owners to not want to deal with it anymore. And I can't say it's anything massive or insane. The car is still totally drivable. I actually daily drove it a decent amount for a couple of months, and now it's time for me to let go of it. So as I mentioned, the car did spend multiple years in Wisconsin where we do have salt. So we did start getting some rust damage on this fender, which is why we have that fender over there. As far as bodywork goes, I've done a little bit of touch up here and there. Nothing insane, but it's definitely showing its age on the paint. One of the repairs that I'm not that excited about is doing the belt cover gaskets on this car, because the existing ones have definitely seen better days. As you can see over here, all that is just oil seeping out from the valve cover gaskets, which obviously isn't ideal, and we would like to get rid of that. And then we have some suspension noises. I do know that I have a bad ball joint that I'm going to repair, and I'm just gonna do both upper control arms because of that, as well as my inner tie rods. The car does get a tiny bit of wobble at highway speeds, at like anything above 80 or 70 even. It's like a very slight wobble, but it's enough to annoy me, a person who's very used to German cars and German handling. And I think I've narrowed it down to inner tie rods. So we're gonna change those as well. And then lastly, in these two boxes, we have by far the most expensive thing I bought for this car. And why don't you stick around to the end to find out what this is. So I think I'm going to start with the suspension parts because the V8 Touareg is currently at an alignment shop, and once they're done, hopefully I'll be able to finish this in time to just drive this over there and drop it off there for the alignment too. Since we are doing the tie rods and upper control arms, we do want to have a wheel alignment done after. 22mm lug nuts, that's huge. Probably should have started on the other side because that ball joint is in much worse shape, like at least the seal is. Because as you can see, this one, I mean, it sure isn't pretty, but I think it's still functional. I don't see any rips in there. Either way, we're replacing both, so it doesn't really matter. And yeah, I know things look a little rusty here, but believe it or not, this car is actually not that bad of a shape rust-wise. There's a lot of bed liner, so I think, well, maybe not specifically bed liner, but a lot of this stuff is the coating that previous owners have used for the frame. And a lot of that is just peeling off, not the actual frame rust. A lot of it is just that coming apart. I just don't think using this sort of material like bed liner is the best for coating frames. But my issue with this bed liner is that it's just so hard to tell what size hardware you need. I'm gonna start by making sure that everything on this control arm is free to move, such as this little bracket for the wheel speed sensor, which is actually brand new. I replaced that very recently because that was one of the issues that came with the car when I bought it. Okay, that came loose up pretty easily. Very glad to see that. I was definitely a little scared that this car was going to be a major pain to work on because that was my experience with the Toyota Sequoia. And I absolutely hated that car because of how hard it was to work on because of the rust. But here, things look great. Obviously, removing the nut is only half the battle. We still need to make sure that the bolt will slide out of the bushing, but I mean, if I can break it loose and it spins off this easily, I'm not super worried about it. Of course, that might also be thanks to the acetone and ATF mix, which I'm running out of. I need to buy some acetone. because apparently that's a very great penetrating fluid. Okay, so we have our nut that came off, and then there's this guy, which is the little camber adjuster spacer thing. Can't remember what these things are actually called, but you know what I mean. Let's see if we're gonna be as lucky on the other side. This guy's definitely a little more stubborn, but not too bad. All right, now let's see what happens with this guy. This one kind of looks a little scary. Also a 1940 ball joint nut. And I did break off the ends of the pin, more or less intentionally, but we're gonna see if we can just try and break through, because getting that out is just not gonna be easy at all. Okay, looks like we can just break through that pin. I mean, things are definitely going much smoother than I expected it to. I thought this stuff would be a lot more stuck than it is. It just looks like it would have been. But again, that's because it looks rusty, but it's not really rusty. It's mostly just this bed liner peeling all over and making things look like they're corroding and falling apart. But the actual metal is in great shape. There we go, came right out. Well, let's see if it will actually get out of our upright now. Wow, easy. All right, let's get those. And the bolts slid right out. Wow, this is going extremely well. Extremely well. Look at that. It's like I'm working on next to a brand new car. There's the right bolt. Unfortunately, I do not have new hardware for this. And I mean, I wouldn't say they look that bad. Again, it's mostly just that bed liner peeling. There we go. If I'm not mistaken, this thing should just slide out. I don't think they have those weird sleeves that they put in the Sequoias on the bottom. I don't know, maybe this car has them too. There we go. This was honestly one of the easiest control arm removals I've done, at least upper control arm removals. I really did not expect this. I expected this thing to be quite a pain in the butt. I'm gonna give these a tiny bit of grease so that if anybody ends up doing this in another 212,000 miles, things go as easily for them as they did for me. I'll line this guy up. Kind of makes me want to keep this car instead of like the Touareg or something, just because it's seemingly so easy to work on. I'm also gonna add a little bit of grease over here. Like butter. Insert our pin. So I just realized that we have grease over here on the seal, meaning that the seal is most likely leaking, which is very unfortunate. And because I did not buy outer tie rods, I probably should have. I don't know why I didn't. It wouldn't have been that much more expensive to buy outer tie rods as well, but I figured, you know, if I don't need them, why buy them? It looks like I'm gonna have to order new outer tie rods and wait to finish this till then. That's kind of unfortunate. I was hoping I'd be done with at least the suspension today. Even though it is unfortunate that we have a bad tie rod and boot, it's not that big of a deal. I ordered new ones for both sides, so we're gonna install those. So I think I'm just gonna work on other things, and I guess this thing is just gonna hang out on the lift for a little while longer than expected, and I guess we'll just fix all the other issues that we have to fix while it's on here. I think I am gonna try and loosen these up just so that they're ready to go once the new parts get delivered. Am I gonna have to heat you up? I don't wanna do that. There we go. I definitely struggled with this clamp here. So I'm kind of surprised that they decided to use something like this in a location such as this one, all the way deep in there by the steering rack. And I wonder if there's supposed to be some sort of an easy way of taking this clamp off, but I honestly don't think so. I just stuck a flathead right into here and kind of hammered it in until this bent away. But I should turn the steering wheel all the way to the left so that this extends out. definitely much easier to work on it. And then on passenger side, so clearly you can see why I decided to replace the upper control arms. I did both sides, even though this was the only side that was messed up, just to be safe. But we're currently in the process of removing this bolt, and its best friend over there came out super easy, didn't have to do anything to it. This one will just not budge. So as you can see, this rotates with the control arm. However, the bolt itself is just not willing to slide out. I've been drenching this thing in penetrant. I've been hammering the crap out of that nut just to preserve the bolt itself. But this thing is just not willing to cooperate whatsoever. So I do want to take a little break from the suspension. I just don't feel like working on it anymore. And let's do something that's a little easier. Or I don't know, it might actually end up being harder. I'm not certain, but let's install this fender. This looks pretty standard. We got 3 bolts over here under the headlight. We have multiple bolts along the top under the hood. These should be pretty easy to access. These probably are gonna be a pain to get to, but let's just find out. Whatever amount of bolts that go here, I might not even be able to get to because they're probably supposed to be accessed through the door, which is locked for some reason. And with the car being on the left, and me not being able to open the doors all the way, I don't know if I can get to those bolts. I don't even see them. Actually, I don't know if there's supposed to be bolts there. I don't see any. I see one all the way at the top here, and that's it. The rest of these are just not there. And I don't know if that's because this fender was previously replaced, or if that's how the car comes from factory, but I guess we're going to find out. But honestly, I think that one bolt over there I could get to with an extension and a wobble socket, but the other 3 holes, they just don't have anything in them, which is kind of odd, but I don't know. With the little wobble extension, this does work. It fell in there somewhere. There he is. Okay. And I think with that done, this side of the fender is basically free because the bottom is rusted out, and then here we only had 1 bolt. I don't know, maybe we're gonna find more bolts once we start taking things off, but it kind of seems like that's all we had. All right, next let's do all of our fender liner bolts, which are T27s. They are indeed T30s. So I guess there's only 2 of these T30 screws in here, and the rest is these stupid plastic clips that I hate because they usually have a really hard time getting out. Not a big fan of that. Kind of surprised that they decided to use that on a Toyota Land Cruiser. I feel like nowadays everybody knows that these things are a pain in the ass, are not really worth using exactly because of that. See, that thing just broke. There we go. Look at that. Aren't you a sneaky little rust hole? My God. Moving on. All right, now what do we have in the engine bay? Probably just a bunch of 10 mils. A bunch of 10 mils indeed. Okay, let's undo those. We are starting to look pretty loose now. We still have those 3 bolts down here, and potentially that's it. On most cars, you have to take off the bumper, but I wonder if I can get in there from here. Oh, that's rusty. All right, we lost one of the bolts. That's unfortunate. I've exhausted basically all of my options for removing this bolt. No matter what I do, this thing is just not bulging whatsoever. It seems to be very, very seized in there. It has been soaked in penetrating fluid, it has been heated up, it has been banged on like crazy, and nothing is working, so I guess we're just gonna have to cut it off. I already ordered a new one of these bolts. We're gonna cut this guy out once we get that one, which is gonna be quite hard because, as you can see, like, I can't really get in there with a reciprocating saw without damaging this. So I'm really not sure how I'm going to do that yet, but the threads are no longer good. But at the beginning of the video, I mentioned to you that there's another part that I'm going to replace. That we have the suspension, we have the fender, we got the valve cover gasket for the motor, and then we have the exhaust. So why did I buy brand new catalytic converters for the Land Cruiser? Believe me, there was a reason. It was sort of my mistake. I thought that the catalytic converters were bad when in reality they weren't. The reason why I thought that is because there was this very weird rattling sound coming from the exhaust. In the last video I showed it and I thought it was an exhaust leak, then I realized that it wasn't. Well, it was, but it didn't sound like an exhaust leak. It literally sounded like metallic rattling, and the only thing that made sense to me at the time was if the primary catalytic converters for some reason had melted and turned into little catalytic converter chunks. I don't know if you've ever seen that happen, but that does happen if the car runs on a misfire for a long time. The material in here ends up melting and turning into little chunks, which, I mean, could potentially clog the exhaust and cause engine damage, or they could break apart and end up being in here and rattling. So that's what I thought was going on when it turned out to not be the case. I think our actual catalytic converters are fine, but what we do have an issue with is this. So the oxygen sensor on here. It took me a little while to find this, but as you can see, there's a nut on here. Currently, there were no nuts holding this oxygen sensor in place. I just found it dangling right here and making all of our noises. I think it was making the rattling noise in the exhaust when it was seated but not bolted down, so it was just bouncing around in here from the exhaust gases moving around, and then eventually it ended up just falling out and dangling, causing me a check engine light. I had already thought that I had bad catalytic converters, so I ended up ordering them, and I think I might as well just replace them with this instead of trying to figure out what kind of nut to put on this, because I've tried all of my nuts and I think the studs are just too rusty to put a nut on here. I figured we might as well just fully replace these and call it a day, and then have an easy time installing our oxygen sensors, because the exhaust came with all new hardware for the oxygen sensors as well. No idea how easy it'll be to remove. I'm soaking all of this in penetrating fluid, but it could be a problem. So I did strongly consider putting on these new catalytic converters, which are aftermarket, and I've got to admit, they aren't like the greatest brand or anything like that. I think I paid maybe $300 and something for them, so not really too trustworthy. I don't think cars like this go through catalytic converters too much. It's mostly just the higher performance cars which get the exhaust really hot, and you know, this car probably wouldn't really damage cheap catalytic converters very fast. But just to be safe, since we did find out that our OEM catalytic converters are in decent shape and all we have an issue with is these studs. In fact, it wasn't even the studs themselves were perfectly fine. I just had to rethread them because they got a little rusty. In fact, it wasn't even the stud that got rusty. I think it was simply the nut that sits here that disintegrated and turned into rust, while the stud itself actually was in perfectly fine shape. I think the best solution for this situation would be to reuse our stock cat and just use our brand new hardware, such as the gasket, because the original gasket basically disintegrated into nothing and no longer exists. And I'm gonna take the new catalytic converters and throw them in the car, and they'll just be included in the sale of this car. Maybe for some reason the new owner will want them, maybe not. In reality, I could return these catalytic converters if I wanted to. I just don't think it's worth the trouble. I mean, I'm gonna end up paying like $50 for the return shipping, and it's just not worth doing that. I think we're just gonna give them away with the car. I think that's our best solution for both myself, the buyer, and the company that sells these exhausts. So I'm gonna use a file to clean off the remains of the old gasket here, grab our new gaskets, and install it on the car. problem I'm having is that it's really hard to get the blade into there and cut this side of the bolt. Should be doable, just take some time. So the good news is that I'm almost there. As you can see, the bolt is getting pretty close to being fully cut through. Okay, I managed to break it off. Because I was having such a hard time cutting through the rest of this, I just threw a wrench on there and pulled down on the control arm. And since it's seized up in there, it kind of provided enough torque to snip this guy off. And now, we can finally remove our piece of crap control arm. I am gonna have to wait for the new bolt, control arm bolt, to be delivered, which should be another couple of days. Unfortunately, they're not as easily sourceable as I would wish. I will say it's kind of ridiculous that every time I'm working on a Toyota, I end up having to break out a reciprocating saw. And this is exactly why I like to apply grease to these bolts, so that nobody in the future has the same issues that I did. And the reason why I'm replacing the tie rods in the first place is because there was some play in the wheel, and you would notice a little bit of a shake, steering wheel wobble, 70 miles an hour and above. There was a tiny bit of play in this direction, and however, I could not find any play in the bolt joints, and it seemed like it was happening behind us and not in the steering rack, because steering rack bushings right in there, you can see it visually, we can tell that they're in good shape and kind of looks like they have been replaced at some point. So by the process of elimination, I believe it is our bolt joint for the inner tie rod that's going out. So we're gonna replace both sides just because why not, and carry on. All right, I still have to finish editing this video today, and it needs to be posted tomorrow. So I am gonna have to save the rest of this work for the next video. And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe. Subscribing would also help me grow this channel to the point that I can become a full-time YouTuber and do this all day, every day. And that way I'll be able to give you guys more complete videos every week. So I hope you guys can appreciate what I have been able to put out so far. And if you do, please hit that like button, and I will see you next week. Have a good day.